Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Liz Mangus. I'm a literacy specialist with Saddleback Educational Publishing. And today we are going to be talking to a fantastic panel of librarians in just a few minutes. So we always like to jump on a little bit early so you can get familiar with Zoom. If you're new here, if you are new to Zoom webinar, you have to find your control bar at the bottom of your web browser window. What this will do is it will give you access to two ways that you can interact with us today. First will be the chat feature. This is where you can interact with all of your fellow attendees. And second is the Q&A feature. This is where you can ask questions of our panelists and also of Saddleback. The chat feature is really fun. This is how you can all talk to each other and let us know where you are. So while you're waiting, why don't you go ahead into the chat area and let us know where you are joining us from. Also, we will periodically post links in the chat area to some of the resources that our panelists will discuss today. So be on the lookout for that. Many of you are accustomed to getting resources and a recording of the webinar after we conclude the broadcast. That email will go out to all registrants 24 hours after the conclusion of our broadcast. So tomorrow you can expect to see the email with the recording and with the resources linked, and of course your certificate of attendance. While we are waiting, please go to Twitter. Please follow us, engage with each other, and continue the conversation. Let everybody know that you're joining us today. Here you see the Twitter handles for both Saddleback and all of our panelists. So make sure you get those, because these are definitely professionals that you want to be connected to as you, a teacher, learn about what skills a school librarian can bring to your program. Or if you are a librarian and you're looking to kind of beef up your program, these are definitely professionals that you want to be connected to. We'll get started in just about 3 minutes. Let's say hello to our panel. How are you, ladies and gentlemen?
Hey.
Absolutely great.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We're very excited. We have a number of librarians in our audience who have been requesting a library-specific webinar for quite some time, and we're happy to be able to finally fulfill that request. Now, the three of you are all with Washington, D.C. Public Schools. When does the school year start, and is it looking like it's going to be a virtual start? What's the status there?
School starts for staff on August the 24th, and for the first grading period, we will have virtual instruction.
Okay. I think that's pretty much the trend across, I don't know, almost every district. I thought I read yesterday that a few districts in Georgia, some other states actually started up in person, which kind of surprised me. But yeah, I think digital is, or remote virtual learning is going to be the majority of the starting formats for the school year. So let's take a look at our chat and see where everybody's joining us from. We have Illinois, Oregon, Seattle,
Romania, Bahamas, Nigeria.
Nigeria,
Right.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of curiosity, if you could also let us know, are you a librarian? Are you a teacher? Are you a school administrator? I'm just curious to see. Oh, got some teachers. Okay, great.
Okay. Hi, Ava.
Special ed teacher, fantastic.
All right.
Canada, Mississauga, always good to see our friends from Canada joining us. Okay, a lot of media specialists. See a few elementary school. So, oh, ESL, excellent. District coordinator for media services, wonderful.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay. Learning resource specialist, okay. Oh, half days. You're doing half days, all right.
Mm-hmm.
And also a parent. This is great information for parents too. Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. Reading specialist. We've got quite a variety of people joining us today. This is great. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you. ESL teacher from India. Oh my gosh. We got to have a worldwide audience today. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. It is 3 o'clock Eastern time, so we are going to officially launch our presentation for the day. We're here to talk about the power of the school librarian in our new schooling reality. This is a very important topic. If you are not a school librarian or not a school media specialist, if you're a teacher, if you're an administrator, I want to ask you a question, and that is, when was the last time you reached out to your campus librarian or your district library program? And the reason I ask that is because every week we have these webinars, and teachers are clamoring. They're looking for resources, ideas, just how to build community. How do I continue teaching literacy, building language? And one of the professionals that I don't hear mentioned as part of the conversation often enough is that of the school librarian. And these are professionals that are very engaged with all media, not just print materials, and they are familiar with how to build and encourage and engage students with literacy and also with building community. So this is the moment. If you have not reached out and built that relationship with your school or district library program, this is the time. Please connect with these professionals because in the end, your students and your communities are the ones who are going to benefit, and that's what matters most. So thank you for being here. I think you're going to love what you're going to learn today. We have a powerhouse panel joining us today. All three of these fabulous professionals work with the Washington, D.C. Public Schools, DCPS. They are school library media specialists, and they are also all a part of a leadership group at the district of librarians called the Library Corps. So they know what they're doing, they are passionate, and they are here to share their wisdom with us today. Before I turn it over to them, let me go ahead and give a formal introduction to all three of our panelists. We're going to begin with Miss Sherri Jones, who's going to talk to us about the elementary perspective. So she has over 20 years of experience and a great deal of passion for technology, librarianship, education, and of course, making a difference in the lives of children. She began her career as a Montessori educator and then transitioned into the school library media specialist role. And this is my favorite part of her biography. Given the constant technological and pedagogical changes we all face, she is firm in her belief that possessing a growth mindset is what keeps librarians relevant in the profession. And I would say that's probably true for all professions. Now more than ever, we need to have that growth mindset. So Sherri's going to talk to us about what she's been working on through that elementary lens. Following Sherri, we're going to hear from Casey Boyd. I know a lot of you know Casey. In addition to being a library media specialist and a part of that leadership group that DC Public School, the DCPS Library Corps I mentioned earlier, she is the advocacy director for the DC Library Association and a member of the executive board of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association. She has been recognized by Scholastic Books as one of 15 librarians to follow on Instagram. Make sure you check that out. And she was awarded the Black Caucus of the American Library Association's 2015 Leadership Award. She is a second-generation educator. She holds master's degrees in library information science, media communications, and education leadership. And we will finally then hear from Mr. Christopher Stewart, who will talk about the perspective that he's bringing from his high school program. So he is a Washingtonian education, homeless, and youth advocate. He holds degrees in political science, a Master's of Divinity, and a Master's of Theological Studies with concentrations in poverty intervention and juvenile justice reform. And of course, he has a Master's in Library Information Science as well with a focus in law. And prior to starting his role at DC Public Schools, he worked in academic and public libraries for more than 15 years. He's also volunteered overseas in Ethiopia and Haiti, where he created curriculum for children and helped build a library in a tent city. So these wonderful professionals have taken some time to put together presentations for you and talk to you about what they are working on. And I'm going to turn it over to Sherri now to begin. Thank you so much all for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to talk about harnessing the power of technology and libraries in the virtual world. Librarians, I think, are naturally inquisitive, and we like to figure out how things work. My natural inquisitiveness and my background in computer science dovetail nicely into my role as a librarian. When COVID-19 caused the schools in our district to close, I knew that there was quite a bit of work ahead of me. This past school year, I served 2 school communities. Staff at both my schools were not very technologically proficient, so I knew this was going to be an uphill climb. The first week of our closure, we were supposed to be on spring break, but not me. I spent my time setting up classroom teams for my K-5 teachers at both of my school campuses. Next slide. Next slide, Casey. What you see in front of you are some of my library cards. At my schools, I was responsible for ELI devices. ELI stands for Empowered Learners Initiative. So I am not only responsible for my library program, but I'm also responsible for our online inventory system for all of our technology, assigning and managing those devices within our building. And what you see here is one of my librarian high achievement marks is the labeling of my carts and devices. It was indeed a huge effort to get all 100 of these devices labeled and ready for deployment to our students. Devices for the ELI program have been assigned to 3rd, 6th, and 9th graders, but when schools shut down, the devices were in the building and students had not yet taken them home. So one of my first tasks was to come up with a plan to distribute devices to students. Knowing that we didn't have enough devices for everyone, I, along with school administration, had to develop a plan for distribution of devices and hotspots, and that required lots of careful planning. We focused on our testing grades and ensured that each family in our school had a device. We also had to be mindful during distribution. Social distancing, safety, and security protocols were of paramount importance. Next slide. Once the teams were set up for classrooms, I then developed a library team for each of my schools. As we began work during the pandemic, staff would email and often ask for resources. Many times, these were repeat requests. So this was a great place to share information with all staff. It didn't overload anybody's email, and it allowed them to come back and review items whenever they had the time. I also used this team to push out ebook licenses and other resources that I felt might be beneficial for staff and or their students. When teachers needed a resource that was not available in our catalog or through our DC Public Library catalog, this is a place that they came to looking for those resources. In my virtual library, I set up the library by grade level bands so that the 2nd grade team could get support and feel that they had some privacy when they were questioning and that it wasn't just open to the entire school community. There was also a technology assistance channel as well. When teachers needed assistance, they could request help there or send me an email if they didn't want to post it there for any type of assistance. Next slide, please. While we'd had a tech person, I quickly realized that students had no real technology skills. They could use apps and blended learning platforms, but they didn't know the basics of computing. I created videos for both students and staff to show them how to use various tools, how to save or upload their work, or how to access specific things, or simply how to utilize a particular tool. I provided training for both staff and students on the various platforms that our district had available. A large portion of my time, which you can see by the image on the bottom of the slide, was spent in creating curricular units from K through 5 during this time. These collections included items in our library catalog, both print and digital, epic book collections, primary source documents from the Library of Congress. catalog. I also did some work for our science units. In these, I included videos to support classroom instruction based on the topics being covered. And in the upcoming year, I'll continue to build out these collections to include some digital escape rooms and virtual field trips. Next slide. As I mentioned previously, my staff at both schools was not very technologically proficient. So I took it upon myself to develop a plan to assist my teachers in using the tools that we had available. In the district, we have a wonderful ed tech team, but 30 to 45 minutes of live training was often not enough to enable teachers to work at the pace that they needed to become proficient. So my first mode was to ask them to please take the ed tech course, and then I could work with them in small groups or do one-on-one training so that they were comfortable before moving on to the next task. My goal was to move them through the basic aspects of team, from posting, creating assignments, utilizing forms, even things as simple as how to share their screens. I'm also a Microsoft Innovative Educator, and I've spent my spring and summer working on building my knowledge base for the coming school year. So I've worked lots with Buncee, Flipgrid, Nearpod, Wakelet, and Canvas, so that when pre-service starts, I'll be able to be there to support my school community. Next slide, please. This year, our district will be utilizing Canvas as our learning management system for the upcoming school year for both virtual and hybrid instruction. This summer, I was part of the Curriculum Innovation Institute and developed a Canvas course companion for our second grade science curriculum. I did this for two reasons. I'm super inquisitive, but I also needed to see what my staff and students would be interfacing with. So I took that opportunity to learn more about Canvas. Canvas is a tool that our secondary schools have been using for some time, but it's new to our elementary staff. And I've been tasked this week with working with our central office staff to begin to design a prototype for a library-facing page for our elementary schools. As you can see, I've joined in the Bitmoji craze and have developed an interactive slide that will appear on my Canvas landing page. Next slide. Initially, it was hard to figure out where I fit in as a librarian while we were distance learning. There were so many resources and so many balls that we were all juggling. It was truly information overload. One of the things that really helped me through this process was there was a small working group of librarians, and I began to meet weekly. At first, it was just a mental health check-in, but ultimately, we began to work together to share ideas and to troubleshoot issues that we were having in our own school communities. We first began working on our library landing pages in Follett, and then to assist each other as we were working through problems we encountered. It has been such a helpful tool that we have decided that we're going to continue to meet during the upcoming school year, both as a way to grow our professional learning networks within DCPS, but also as a means of support. So I'd just like to close out my presentation with this. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sherri. I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to tell my story in terms of what I experienced since schools closed down March 13th. So like you, I sprung into action. I asked the question of myself, which was, how can I support my students, my teachers, and my parents? And in thinking about this, I had to, it's based off of me knowing my school community very well. So one of the first things that I did was I updated my website and also my Follett landing page. And I did this so the students could access all of the resources, not only by tablet and laptop, but also by cell phone, because I wanted to ensure that they would be able to take advantage of all the rich resources that the school district was offering to them. Then I went deeper. Because I knew what my students enjoyed, I established a summer virtual office hours so the students could get in contact with me directly every day, Monday through Friday, from 9 to 12. If I was not sitting in a class speaking with or teaching, co-teaching a class. And one of the things I observed out of my students is that a lot of them were really stressed out. So I wanted them to engage in leisure reading that was pleasurable. So one of the things that I did was I found a rich resource in graphic novels and comics that could be used not only leisurely, but also in the classroom as well. And we all remember during that first 2 weeks when schools were first closed, there was a huge data dump of just free materials. It was wonderful, but it was a lot of materials and it was overwhelming. I just went in and I extracted those materials that would work best for my school community. Now, even though we have a rich ebook platform in our district and we have access also to the Washington, D.C. public library system, I still found additional ebooks and audiobooks and read-along books that were free, but not just for my middle school students. I wanted to support the entire family, where I had a lot of students that were babysitting at home. So they were looking for materials that they could use with younger siblings while they were babysitting, like that sibling as I referred to earlier, a cousin or me, or even the neighbor's child. So I created a pre-K through 12th grade ebook resource for all of my students, which they enjoyed. Then also too, I created a summer reading list, book list, that materials that they could find online through our wonderful partners in the DC Public Library system. And they were able to access these ebooks. Also too, I didn't want to forget about my parents and my caregivers. I found resources for them that would be helpful for them, such as how to deal with managing kids and anxiety, some tips for parents as they're balancing that screen time during school closures. That was a real popular one that was discussed with my parent group. So these are things that I wanted to include on my website and also my landing page that would be supportive for my entire school community. Then from there, I also started to work on attending classes. Just as I did in a face-to-face environment, I wanted to make sure I brought those same skills and also that support into the virtual world. And in doing that, what I did was I reminded teachers, and I gave them a little time because this was overwhelming for them as well. And after giving them a little time to get settled in their classes, I reminded them, hey, I'm here to support you. What can I come in and help and support you do in terms of a lesson or activity? So in this case, what you see in this image are two images where I supported a research project that was through our health department. And we also played games through quiz.com. In addition to that, one of my 8th grade teachers was also reading the book Animal Farm. So I participated in a book reading of Animal Farm on a regular basis, with the kids. And I helped find that book online, free ebook access, so all the kids could enjoy the lesson that the teacher was teaching. Many DCPS librarians celebrated National Library Week in a very unique way. They participated in our wonderful Washington Teachers Union's Lessons on TV. And this is it's called Learning Doesn't Stop, Lessons on TV. And it was a partnership between the Washington Teachers Union and one of our local stations. And the wonderful thing about this was that we had some students that it was taking quite some time for them to receive devices at home. So as a result of that, our president decided that she would round up a group of teachers that would teach lessons Monday through Friday for 30 minutes on television. And all of the kids would be able to access that television station from their homes. So that was the service that we brought to them. We received a lot of notoriety behind it because it was wonderful. There was librarians during that first week, during National Library Week. And we also had librarians that appeared additionally throughout the time period. This program ran from roughly the first week in April all the way through the end of school. So marketing and branding my library program was very instrumental in servicing my students in the virtual world. I had to understand first and foremost how social media just plays a very integral part in the lives of my students. I used research that was provided through the Pew Research Center, and I had to understand which platforms could work in reaching my students the best. Instagram was the best way to reach my students because they love that platform. But then for my parents, it was Facebook. And my grandparents, it was also Facebook. So I use these two platforms to communicate heavily with my parents and my students. So here are a couple of examples of what my social media platforms kind of look like. I also created a lot of tutorials for students, which was very helpful to them on how to use and reminding them how to use the Follow Destiny catalog. And then I always had a YouTube page, but what I did was just re-imaged it and relaunched it so that it would reflect many of the resources that the kids needed. Most importantly is that kids love to be read to. So I did a lot of read alouds during that time. And it was not just for my my students that were middle school, my younger students, the siblings of my students, they enjoyed those read alouds as well. So here's an example of a advertisement I placed on Instagram stories on the left-hand side of the screen, you know, using a lot of graphics to get the kids' attention. And I think we all can agree with this, is that if we did any type of videotaping in our home, we turned our homes or a section of our homes into a little mini studio. So I took advantage of my niece and nephew's bookcase and used that as a backdrop for many of my recordings. Continuing on, we also read All American Boys as a school. You know, this was another activity where my wonderful principal and my PTO purchased a book for every rising 7th and 8th grade student, sent it to their home, and the students and the teachers read the books together online using Microsoft Teams, which is our main platform in our district. In addition to that, I decided I wanted to be be also generous, and I had a couple of contests for my students, and if they won the contest, I sent a book of their choice to their home. So it was just something that I decided to do that was just a little extra, you know, to help the students, you know, kind of cope with being in the house during quarantine. There are many benefits of using social media, and I'm going to run through these really quickly. This is the greatest personal learning network that you could ever use. I've learned so much from different people that I've met on these wonderful platforms. I've saved a lot of money. I've helped advocate for myself, not only in my school, but also in my profession in terms of what I do as a school librarian. And I get to share what I'm doing every day in my library media center. And that's the beauty of it, is that PLN, using social media, is a wonderful, wonderful medium. And in closing, I'm going to say this, is that if you're going to engage in social media, please check with your school district's social media policy. I found through doing professional development that with different school districts, every school district is different. Make sure you check in and make sure that you are abiding by the rules of your district. Here are a couple of tips here. I know that we're going to share this webinar and also the slides with you at a later date, but there are a couple of tips that I've listed here that you should note. And most importantly, at the bottom, following students is not advised. I always try to remain very transparent with students when I'm online and in engaging with them. And last but not least, toot your own horn. I'm going to say it again. Toot your own horn. Do not be afraid to share posts with central office employees, upper level administrators, your principal, the outside community. Share what you're doing. In many cases, many of these employees were former classroom teachers themselves, and the community loves to hear about what's going on in the school. Enjoy what you're doing, show the beauty of it, and just have a wonderful time, servicing students through your school library program and advocating about this profession that we love all too well. So I thank you for listening, and I'm now going to turn it over to Christopher. If you would like to follow me, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube at boss_librarian, and my website is caseyboyd.com. Thank you very much, and here's Christopher.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Stewart, and I am going to talk to you about empathetically engaging with our students, empathetically engaging with them along with the community, and also with library science as well. Next. So empathetically meeting the need, unconventionally serving our students. So this is a picture, these two pictures are of our library at Bell High School. I miss this space so much, as I'm sure each of you all miss your spaces so much. This is my 4th year, but my first year, I wanted to make sure that I was creating a space that was more like a living room, that really spoke to students. I think someone says they can't hear me. That really, let me speak up a little more, that really spoke to students and their ability to be in a space of peace and love, and wanting to make sure that even if they didn't necessarily have this home environment or living room environment at home, that they could definitely have it here at the school library. Next. So along with the mission and vision, the mission is to make sure that we are serving students, parents, and educators with literary tools, empowering students to be ethical researchers, lifelong digital citizens, and serve the world with peace and love. So the picture to your left is a picture of the Peace and Love room. So this is a room that was actually occupied by the English department, but I decided to turn it into a peace and love room. My school is located in the city, and whether it was in the city or suburbs or rural area, it didn't really matter, but I wanted to make sure that it was this space where we could have restorative justice, where students can come and get the attention that they needed if they needed a break outside of the classroom. So there's also a television in there for documentaries. You see hangers in the corner. There's actually a mirror there. Usually there will be shoes there and clothes on those hangers, because we have a closet for students to get free clothes. So this is just a space where a lot of students will come and hang out after school, before school, during school, and have deep conversations, some crying moments when someone was dumped, or when someone got a B instead of an A on their assignment. So things like that, but just creating a space so important. Next. So I created this website for Columbia Heights Education Campus Bell High School Library website, because our school has an amazing website, but I wanted to make sure that we had a high school library website to really highlight some of the things that we were doing in the library, to bring attention to different resources that are very library or library specific, but also community specific. Next. So one of the things, when this first broke out, and I think this went live in February, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people started really talking about it in March, coronavirus, COVID-19. But I made sure I created a tab on the website that focused on news stories, will it be Telemundo, BBC, CNN. I wanted to make sure that students had access, and teachers as well as educators and parents had access to knowledge. If they weren't necessarily going to these news sources or picking up a newspaper, they could go to the website and get all of these resources all in one. So we have technology resources, all free with hyperlinks, educational resources, all free hyperlinks, parent toolkits, as well as games, right? Because it's important to make sure that if they're at home for a little while, it's okay for them to play some games. A lot of these are educational games. So kind of changing the landscape and saying, hey, if you're gonna play this game, how about you play an educational game too? Next. Virtual learning tools. And Casey and Sherri, I believe, touched on this. Netiquette and integrity guidelines, extremely important. This is another tab that I created. One of the things, definitely, you know, I would not recommend following your student. I would also recommend, you know, making sure that you keep those guidelines very clear and do look at your social media policy as it applies to your specific district. Very important. And maybe even creating a separate social media page for your school or your work, but keeping them extremely, keeping them separate. Very, very important again. Next. So content area resources. So a lot of times teachers are hesitant to come to librarians, school library media specialists, and I wanted to make sure that for that teacher who was maybe reluctant, that they could go to the website if they didn't necessarily want to call me up or email me or come to the library, which they can't do at this time. So creating a content area resource specific page tab allows for educators, parents, teachers to go and look up for their art, music, social studies, science, physical education, PE resources that can help them with their class, because you have to be extremely creative when going virtual, right? And we want to make sure that we're engaging students. Next. Speaking of creative teaching, there's another tab that talks about this creative teaching, creative sites for educators, where you can build free apps maybe. Politics and Prose, which is local to Washington, D.C., an amazing, amazing bookstore that also partners with schools, but also to the Washington Speakers Bureau. And you can, whether you're looking for a politician or you're looking for an educator or someone to come in and speak to your students, I would do this very often. I would have author talks at least once a month. I would have politicians come in. I would have, I had Japanese singers come in. I mean, anyone who could come in and kind of be able to create an environment where they're engaging students in the library space in an unconventional way. Funding for educators. Definitely, even when the district can't necessarily hand us over $1 million to do programming, there's so many resources out there, whether it be grants for teachers and educators, Donors Choose, Fund for Teachers, Lilly Endowment, Pearson, and also exemplars. When you want to look at something and you say, you know what, let me help this educator with this, or if you need to teach a course, and you want to look at some different examples, what worked and or what didn't work. Next. Exceptional student resources. So I would hear this over and over again, even when I was in the public library, how many of our SPED babies, our special education students, were not getting the resources, nor were their parents that they needed. So I created a tab, Exceptional Student Resources, where you're talking about the laws and regulation, IEP versus 504, apps and websites, and Library of Congress with the National Library Services that has resources for students who may be experiencing, who are deaf or blind. Center for Accessibility, which is located with the District of Columbia Public Library, that has a wealth of knowledge and information pertaining to free books for individuals who learn differently, who are exceptional. So making sure that we, in parent resources, making sure that we push out this information, because oftentimes a teacher may not know how to engage their student who may learn differently. And subsequently, if that student is failing and then feels defeated, we can step in and do some things. We can have some resources for these students and also these parents to make sure they don't feel left out and they don't feel less than at all, because they're not. They are amazing, amazing. Next. So since March 2020, unique website visitors, and that's basically website visitors who are coming on for the first time, increased by more than 600% to the website. So the traffic by location was the District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia, DMV, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, California, Texas, and Nevada. And I think Nevada was my grandmother, because I gave her the website and I'm pretty sure that was my grandmother. But yeah, so I think, you know, this is pretty amazing. 600%. And this is basically letting people know that here's the knowledge. This is what we do as librarians, and just explore and play with it. And yeah, next. So education is for improving the lives of others and for leaving your community and world better than you found it. Marian Wright Edelman. So these are pictures of some of my babies, and I know they're not babies, but they're my babies. And one of a parent too. So I went after March, I think it was the end of March, April, I started delivering books when we closed. So delivering books to students, bookmarks, but also water, hand sanitizer, and snacks. I wanted to make sure that my students had everything that they needed to not fall behind when it came to reading, right? And getting books that they enjoyed. So I went to their houses. You know, we have 8 wards in DC, and we have, we're Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, Northeast. And I just drove with my little Prius, and which is good on gas, so, you know, it works. And, and just drove to their houses, right? You know, I was masked up, but making sure that that we're engaging with them is real. You know, they need to feel that love and know that we care and we haven't forgotten about them because we're not currently at that brick and mortar school. Next. So how do we serve our students now? We have to meet them where they are. I had students who texted me on the right. You'll see one of the students that I saw at the protest down at the White House. I was there, I was coming, but they're texting like, Mrs. Stewart, I have not seen you, where are you? You know, and they wanna know. This has nothing to do with books, but they wanna see your face. They wanna make sure that you're advocating for them, and I actually, you know, in the streets with them too, protesting for what they believe in and what I believe in. And to the left, I was actually getting something to eat for me and my family, and I see one student, her sister, and her aunt. Well, I always keep books in the car. So I said, you know what, y'all gonna get some books, right? So they were so eager. And then we talked for like 10 minutes about books that they enjoyed and what they have been doing and how this was tough and challenging during this coronavirus and Black Lives Matter experience. You know, so I think it's important to make sure that we're engaging as much as possible, even in unconventional ways when you're going to get something to eat, right? Next. So we can't shy away from the difficult conversations. Before we closed the third quarter, I created a course, A Conversation, Critical Approaches to Race, Ethnicity, and Representation. And this course touched on a lot of the conversations that we're having now as a country, nation, and world that students have been asking and students will continue to ask. So why not create an opportunity for them to talk about it? So on September 2nd at 3 p.m., you know, I'm gonna have a Zoom session, Let's Talk Race, Racism in Our World. And that's basically going to give them an opportunity to continue to vent and talk about how they can change the world, because they have a voice and they have the ability to change it as well. And we have to listen to them and know that we have so many resources in our libraries and at our disposal rather, as far as disseminating this information to them. Next. Serving the community with food and books. So I've been, serving the homeless community for some time now, since I was in high school in DC, and it is very, very important to me. But what I found out is that it is very, very important to students and educators as well. And so Street Sense Media, they wrote an article a couple years ago. I would do a brunch once a month, brunch and book discussion on the streets early in the morning on the corner of 15th and Irving. And usually we get about 20 to 30 on average, students and maybe homeless individuals or community members. So we're going to kick that back off this school year. And September 8th, there's going to be a brunch and book grab. So it's not going to be a lot of conversation, but they'll be able to come on the corner of 15th and Irving, September 8th, 9:30 to 10:30. If you all are in the area, please come by. And it's going to be a new book. They always get a brand new book, or two or three, and also brunch, right? People are hungry, and they're not just hungry for food, but they're hungry for knowledge. So to be able to give this resource to them, as far as educational resources and books and conversation, and also letting the students know that we're not in an incubator state as far as just being in the walls of the school, but you live in a community and you have to serve that community and be in conversation with the community and engage with the community. That's really what it's about. Next. So equitably celebrating the beauty of each student and staff member. So as we come up on a new school year, typically I would do some type of campaign for National Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th to October 15th. Well, because we're not in the school, we're still going to do some things. And we have so many students at our school from different ethnicities and backgrounds, and also educators. We have to make sure that we're celebrating them when we're celebrating these months and different events going on. So get creative with creating a lot of different types of flyers and events and pushing out books and articles that celebrate this richness, their heritage. Next. So I want you to really clap for yourself, whether you are in your car with your phone, at home holding the baby, or ready to chow down on some, I guess kind of late for lunch, but lunch dinner. I just want you to clap for yourself, and I'm going to clap for you. We're celebrating you because you've been doing this work, and I know it hasn't been easy. So celebrating you, celebrating you. Next. So this is me and my beautiful wife and my amazing 3 kids, but I just want to thank you so much. My Twitter handle is @ChristopherPax. I actually just started a Twitter, can you believe it, in June. My email, ChristopherStewart8@gmail.com, and the Bell Library website. Peace, love, and justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. We have so many great questions coming in, but before we get to that, I know Casey has something that she wants to share with you, and then all of our panelists have some book recommendations that they want to share as well. So hang tight. I know you want your questions answered, but we just got a little bit more content for you. I got my pen there. A little bit more content for you, and then we'll get to your questions. Go ahead, Casey.
Very quickly, I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation by these phenomenal librarians. And especially if you are not a school librarian, this is the time that you can support school librarians, not only in DC, which is we're facing threats, but also across the country where they're also facing threats as well. Please visit every library's webpage, which is safeschoollibrarians.org, and pick a petition and sign it. Because the more people that sign these petitions, it sends an indelible message back to the leadership within those districts, that librarians need to be in place to service the entire school community. So please take a moment. You don't have to be you don't have to attend that district. You can just sign all those petitions and you can help this effort. Thank you much. And I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can start talking about some wonderful books. Okay.
Okay, before we do that though, I always like to let everybody know what is coming up next week.
Sure.
So let's talk about next week's Saddleback webinar. Back due to popular demand, we have Dr. Catherine McKnight coming back for another 2-part webinar series. Part 1 will take place next week. She's going to talk about 4 ways to create effective e-learning, and then she's going to come back the week after that to talk about grading and assessment for the modern classroom and e-learning. So some great tips and strategies and ideas from Dr. Catherine McKnight. Please register at sdlback.com/webinar series, or when you get the email prompting you to register, you can do that as well. And Casey, I believe you have the favorite books on your slide deck, is that right?
Yes, correct. So
All
I'll
right.
share my screen again, and we'll go on to the next slide, which is our favorite titles.
Oh, good. I get to go first. So I was super, super excited to get my box of Saddleback books. And the first thing that caught my eye was the Emoto cards. These cards are absolutely gorgeous. And I love that they have a ring. So I'm going to be talking to you guys later because I need to order one for every classroom in my building. We are really focused in our district on social, emotional learning and development. And I just honestly, 15 minutes before this call, got off of an academic leadership team meeting with my administrator about what are we going to do in the fall. And so these are definitely going in every classroom and in the library. But the books in the series, it's the social emotional, I have it here, sorry. The SEL series, oh, you can't see it because of the background, but at any rate, I read Problem Solving, and I thought that that was a perfect book for my community. I'm in Ward 7 in the District of Columbia, and we have a huge homeless population. Our kids are very, very transient. And it's hard on kids no matter what age they are. But this really spoke to me because I thought about our upper elementary kids, third, fourth, and fifth, and how hard it is for them when they're coming into schools where maybe some of the kids have been there since preschool and they're established relationships and trying to make friends. And in this book, Marla is a 6th grader going into a new school, and she's not being true to who she is. Anything that, you know, a student says to her, she says, oh, I love to do that. Oh, I love to do that. And when it's her birthday, her parents ask her friends to come over, and her friends are shocked because all the things that they think that she loves, she actually doesn't, because she's not who she's been pretending to be. And I think that for many of our kids, we do put on a face of who we're not just to be accepted. And I think this is an excellent book to open up those conversations. So this whole series is something that I'll be recommending to our social worker as part of her toolkit when she's working with kids. So thank you so much for those wonderful things.
Okay, I'm going to talk about 2 sets of books. The first is from the Welcome Newcomers collection. It's a book on social skills, and I work with middle schoolers, and sometimes they need a little refresher when it comes to in their social skills, which includes something as simple as good eye contact, demonstrating respect towards one another. You know, that's a real big thing with this age group. In addition to that, I also, I love this book because it discusses how it's okay to show your emotions, and sometimes middle schoolers are very confused in this arena of how they should and should not show their emotions. So I really enjoyed that aspect of this book, and this is a book that I definitely want to use with populations of students that kind of trickle down to the library, and I see them come in when they're upset, and this will hopefully be a bibliotherapy related book that will help them. The second one set of books that I really like are the quick reads here. And they're the Connective Lives series. And what I like about this is that when you're trying to get a student into reading and just kind of pull them in, I love using these current entertainment type of featured books. Here you have Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, and Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott. These are artists that our students really, my students really, really enjoy listening to their music. But what they do in this is that they, the author has incorporated comparing and contrasting both of the authors. And if they master both of the artists that are featured in the book. So if students are able to master that in a very lighthearted and relaxed setting, then when they go into the classroom, they'll remember those skills and they will hopefully bring those skills into the classroom and apply them there. Also, too, a lot of Venn diagrams that's used in this series. So wonderful book series. These are two that I'm definitely going to be using this fall. Here's Chris.
Right, so the Little Rock Nine, we've heard of this experiment, this case that took place in 1957 after Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, and these are a group of students who were integrating to school and really had, of course, a difficult time because they were Black students and they were facing discrimination, racism, and frankly, in Arkansas, a community that did not want them. So this is a amazing book because it's historical. And too often, when you are looking at high-low books, you unfortunately come across books that are not age appropriate. So for my high school students, they need this knowledge. They want this knowledge, but they don't want to read a baby book. So this is great. This is 110 as far as the Lexile level. So for those students who are reading on a lower level, they're getting great content, but also in historical content, but it's not babyish. And the next one, Wrongly Accused, this is powerful. This is a Lexile level of 330, but it reminded me of Just Mercy with Brian Stevenson. He doesn't know that he's my goddad, but he's like my godfather. No, he's not, but I kind of want him to be. But he's amazing, and it focuses on the injustice system, the Innocence Project, false accusations, Richard Dan Phillips, and also false confessions. And we have learned about that through a series of more recently, if one didn't know about it, in the 80s and 90s with the Central Park Five. So it touches on that. So it makes it very layman for our young students and puts it in a language where they can understand. So really, really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have a lot of really great questions. And I'm actually quite eager to continue this conversation and hear your answers to some of these questions that have popped up. So let's start with Chris. There have been a few people you may have seen in the Q&A or in the chat if you were kind of keeping a track of that on the out of the corner of your eye. When you were distributing books, a few people were asking, how did you get those books? Did you buy them? And if you bought them, was there a specific funding source? Because people kind of love that idea and wanted to know like where these books came from that you were distributing when you were out connecting with your students and distributing books and other supplies.
So I had a lot of books that I had previously that I had just owned that were new, that came from publishing companies or American University, WAMU. They had donated some books to me about a year and a half ago. And I had also had some books from our central office too. So between those, I was able to, donate quite a bit of books. Definitely, my mind is telling me that within the next 2 months, I'm going to run out of books. So Donors Choose is what I'm really will be on. I will be on Donors Choose and reaching out to publishing companies to to you know to to donate as much as possible. Also going on Canva and maybe talking to some of my fellow librarians. It's the 300-400 on here, and we can create books, right? We can actually do the work of creating these books that our students need, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school, and distributing books. Yeah.
Great. And somebody else wanted to know, Chris, if you, when you were compiling on your website those tabs of the different resources, your electronic resources and tools, did you have any way to gauge the engagement with that? Were kids and families taking advantage of those? And how did you know that? And what was the level of engagement there?
Yeah, so when looking at the analytics, I didn't do surveys that was that specific, but when looking at the analytics with Wixsite, which is how I created the free website, it showed that they were really engaged with. I had a student, I had a parent tab that I just recently took down to redo before we open up, but the parent tab was very popular. The student tab was extremely popular, and the COVID tab was very popular. Even before I had the creative teaching tab, and that was very popular. And right after we closed, the exceptional student tab was popular. So, I mean, they all went to different tabs, but those 5 or 6 were really the go-tos. And the average time was 31 minutes on the website.
Wow, that's good. That's really good. The next question is sort of, it's open to all three of you. It's a great question. How do you think we can get school principals to understand and appreciate what school librarians can offer a school community? A lot of principals are closing libraries in Miami-Dade or refusing to replace librarians when they retire. So any thoughts on how we can communicate the importance of this to some of the campus level people in certain districts who are making some of these decisions?
I'm going to go first, and then Casey, you can finish up. Honestly, as a librarian, you have to get in where you fit in. And I know that that sounds trite, but you have to make that one connection. You make that one connection, and it's like a ripple in the pond, and it expands exponentially. So you build your allies, you build your base. You start with the kids, you start with the parents. And parents really drive everything. So when parents are in an uproar about library programs not being in their children's schools, administration and the boards listen. So it sounds simple, it's not simple, but really you just have to get in, dig in, build your programming, build your fan base with the kids. It trickles out to the parents, it trickles out, it just goes from there.
I also want to chime in, and I want people to understand that many of our administrators are unaware what a school library program looks like. So there is a lack of education on that part, because when they're working on their principal and superintendent's licenses, oftentimes the school library program and ancillary programs are not even referenced. They talk about special education because that ties in heavily with laws across the country, and also dealing with the receipt of federal funds. But when it comes to libraries and ancillary programs, that's where the disconnect is. So it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of showing by example, educating your administrator, showing examples of what you are doing. As I mentioned in my presentation, you may start becoming a pest, but becoming that pest and demonstrating this is what we do, this is how we contribute. And then finally is that you need to tie in your activity in your library program, your circulation, to test scores. That's where you're talking the language of those administrators. Test scores, number of circulated books, number of the foot traffic that comes in your library every day. You know, our principals and administrators are more statisticians these days, I feel sometimes, than educators. So we have to shift as librarians, and we have to talk the same language that they do.
And
Thank
Casey,
you.
I just want to add to that, marketing yourself. Casey is a master at that, and she has gotten all of the librarians in the district to really up their game as far as marketing. So taking pictures of yourselves, interacting with students, having your own library Twitter, and you're tweeting out to your school district, including your principal. You're looking good. Your principal is looking good.
Great points. Great
I would
points.
I would also add that, you know, so at my school, it's a campus. So we have a middle school and a high school. Our middle school librarian, Angela Falkenberg, she does amazing work there. And the principal recognizes both of us. And in recognizing both of us, she could have written one of us out of the budget, right? She chose not to. And not only that, but she has voiced the importance of librarians with fellow principals. So having that backing, as we've mentioned, you know, having that backing of your principal, that spread, I mean, she's been in the game 30 plus years. So having, you know, that is important to get the word out there and to tell other principals, hey, maybe you need to keep your librarian because they can do a lot of great work.
Thank you. We are running out of time, but I think this is an important question to ask because it ties in nicely to the previous question. We have a lot of people who are looking to build and strengthen and market their programs and have specific questions about some of the things that they've heard today. For Casey specifically, there were 2 questions about some things you mentioned. Somebody wanted to know a little bit more about how the parent group worked in practice. And then also your school-wide reading initiative, did that have to happen through a certain class period for you to get the engagement in that? So just 2 questions directed at specific things that you talked about that it sounds like people are going to try to maybe replicate, but need a little bit more details.
We got the buy-in from the PTO, Parent-Teacher Organization, at my school. And just parents that are just very active in the educational lives of their child. The second part was, I'm sorry, second part was?
Your school-wide reading initiative with the book that you bought for all the students.
Our school-wide reading initiative was in reflection to the unfortunate murder of George Floyd. And as a result of that, we felt we had a responsibility to our students to provide a reading that will help them understand and process this, because that's a lot for a middle schooler to understand. So our entire 7th and 8th graders participated in this, and our PTO and our parents were wonderful because they raised the money to purchase the books for the school-wide reading.
Thank you. We just had a comment come in about the Peace and Love Room. People, Christopher, love the Peace and Love Room. They think it's a great idea. They definitely appreciate that idea, and just wanted to go and make sure that you saw that acknowledgement if you didn't already. So we want to thank our panelists for joining us today. This has been extremely valuable information. I know there were a couple of questions we didn't get to that we'll get to offline, mostly around, you know, connectivity and things of that nature. However, we definitely appreciate your time and sharing your thoughts and ideas, and the response has been phenomenal. Just looking at the chat, people are loving it. So before we close, I just want to show you one more time how you can connect with Saddleback on your favorite social media platform, or just go ahead and email us, contact@sdlback.com should you need more information. And thank you, not only to our panelists for coming and sharing their wisdom today, but to everybody watching. This is hard work in normal times. And now everybody needs to kind of recreate. And I know that you're working so hard and dedicating time to your own learning to hear what your peers and colleagues have to say so that you can be that much better for your students and your school and community. And we see you, we recognize you, and we thank you so much. And hopefully you will tune in with us next week. To our panel, thank you, thank you, thank you. We appreciate you, and we'll see everybody again next week. Take care.